Greetings, YouTube. Pyro Smurf asked me if I require my players to actually roleplay diseases. Um, I haven't used diseases a whole lot in games because after mid-level, diseases are fairly unimportant. You've got spells that'll handle that kind of thing. And at low levels, I really try to emphasize a little more action-oriented adventuring. Kind of give them a purpose for moving out into the world, though you could use a disease as an impetus to go into the world to adventure to find a cure or find someone that can handle it and bring them back to your settlement or something. That's a viable option. And I have to tell you, I just haven't used diseases a lot. I have used parasite, and I used parasites a couple of times. The first time I used a parasite was actually an egg laid in the victim of a monster. I was on the spot, I needed a creature, and one of my favorite tricks to do if I'm on the spot is I take a standard creature, one straight out of the book, and I add a couple of different things or subtract a couple of different things on the fly, and then I go from there. So I was in a crunch, I needed a monster, so I picked a bear, and then I gave the bear armor, like a chitinous exterior coating like an insect. Left the overall shape of the bear, it's made it fully bipedal, but it had a very shuffling kind of, and it would kind of run on fours and it would stand up and it would function. Not quite fully bear form, but not fully quadrupedal, somewhere in between. And when it bit people, it would pierce them with a hollow tongue, and the tongue would actually inject their victim with an egg. And whether the victim survived or not, the egg would be left to hatch. And if the person survived and went away, the egg was going with them. Now, the egg actually didn't harm the person that had it in them if they survived the attack. It would pass through their system, gaining sustenance along the way, and then they would pass it on into whatever place you put waste, whereupon it would gestate in the waste into a larval form and then eventually grow into a miniature version of itself, and then fairly quickly, not quite alien movie speed, but over the course of I think it was 3 months, it would get to an adult size, and then it would start the whole process over again. And I was able to plague the player characters with this because they had encountered these things on a different plane of existence, and then they suddenly showed up again because they had been bitten, they had passed the eggs through their system, and now they were infecting the area around where they lived, and they went out and they wiped them out, they got bit again, and so this actually took 3 full cycles before it occurred to them that something was going on. Another parasite I've used was a magical parasite, picked up because one of the main characters was a arcane caster, a sorcerer, and had been infected by this arcane parasite that literally stuck itself to the caster's back. But it was an astral creature. So while it was stuck on the sorcerer's back in our dimension, the dimension they were in, I should say, you couldn't see it and you couldn't affect it. All it was doing was leeching magical energy from the spellcaster. So the way that the character learned that they had this is I handed them a note and said, "You can't pass any 5th level spells." And the next day, I handed them a note and said, "You can't cast any 4th level spells." This gave them a really significant impetus to go find out why the heck he couldn't cast his spells, which led them having to go to the astral plane, find this nest of these creatures, and they were being harvested by a race of astral beings to get magical energy. They killed the guardians of this particular nest, wiped out the nest completely or significantly portions of it, and more importantly, the portions of it that had the parasites that had been on this particular spellcaster, and the spellcaster was then free. But I haven't really used diseases beyond that, to tell you the truth. Now, Pyro Smurf also asked about how I handled the differences between viruses and diseases. Now, most viruses I know of are diseases. Now, you can have things like genetic diseases, and you can have parasites that give you disease-like symptoms, but pretty much every disease I can think of is caused by some kind of virus or environmental poison, like cancer, for example. That's a disease you could use that isn't caused by a virus, though there are cancers which are caused by viruses. Viri, I guess, would be the proper term. And I've never made a distinction that fine in a game of any kind. This just didn't have to come up. And if the distinction was important, I would, of course, roleplay it and make it a significant portion of the adventure. It just has never popped up. So, I asked my viewers, how have you used diseases of any variety, or parasites in the case of example I gave, in your campaign?